Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to the MMA webinar series. Today our webinar, sponsored by DataXu, is the top 3 tips to nail native advertising. Before we get started and hear from our guest speaker today, I want to give you a little information about the MMA and the organization that's bringing you these webinars. The MMA is, as you may know, is a global trade organization with over 800 members around the globe. Our mission is really straightforward. It's to accelerate the transformation and the evolution and innovation of marketing through mobile, driving business growth with closer and stronger consumer engagement. We do that by leaning on our 4 pillars: cultivating inspiration, building capability for success, demonstrating measurement and impact, and advocacy. We obviously serve many different company types, from brand marketers to agencies to media sellers and technology enablers. So from American Express to Walmart, from Dunkin' to Hilton, we have many, many brands represented in the MMA, both at our board level and at our membership level. We're really glad to have the brands here. Today, we want to help you learn more as much as you possibly can. You feel free to ask questions. There's a control panel on your right. There is a drop-down menu for questions. You can write questions into that control panel, and we will look at those toward the end of the webinar and field as many as we can. If you don't hear your question addressed, fear not. The sponsor will receive all the questions and will follow up with answers as appropriate. There are 2 questions, however, that I'd like to get out of the way right away, and that is, what will happen? Will the presentation be available for later downloading, and will the webinar be available for later viewing? And the answer to both is yes. Within 48 hours from this webinar, everybody who registered for the webinar will receive an email with links to both the presentation and the video of the webinar. So today we are going to hear from Bill Simmons, the co-founder, CTO, and EVP of Product Development at DataXu. He's known as Dr. Bill. I'm Leo Scullin, the VP of Industry Programs here at the Mobile Marketing Association. And just to give you a highlight of the agenda today, the top line is we're obviously going to be talking about native advertising. So the first issue is a look at native advertising today, what it is. What is native advertising in a mobile environment? What has made native such an instant hit? 3 tips to nail native advertising, and then we'll address your questions and answers. Okay, without further ado, here's Dr. Bill Simmons.
Hi, my name is Bill Simmons, co-founder, Chief Technology Officer, and Head of Product Development at DataXu. So DataXu is a demand-side platform. We were recently ranked by the Forrester Wave as the top solution in market. We build a platform that is very analytics focused, very focused on helping brands solve for automating their marketing such that it can maximize their ROI. DataXu provides data management, insights and analytics, and optimized media buying. So let's dive right into this. So I'll start off with a little bit of background in advertising today to create a contrast with native advertising. Native is a subject that I'm very excited about. It's one of the more exciting trends that we're seeing in the market. So what's changing? I mean, so advertising today is being affected by a lot of trends, and one thing that's changed is it used to be that you could run an ad on TV. There were only really 3 networks, and if people wanted to watch your show, they had to sit through your ad. Today, consumers are more in control. There's a lot more people consuming media how they want it, where they want it. They're running, and if there's too much advertising, they're running ad blockers. In addition, they're consuming media across tablets and mobile phones, connected TV, many different environments. What has been discovered is that consumers are getting tired of traditional advertising. They want something more seamless for many reasons. Some of it is user experience, but when you survey people, what they actually say is one of the reasons they don't like the advertising is it slows down the page, and they have metered data plans on their mobile device, and the advertising consumes a lot of data. So what's happened is the emergence of these really efficient in-feed advertising, and BuzzFeed, which is pictured here, is one of the pioneers of this approach where they've really made it work for them, and they exclusively run native advertising, which an example is the in-feed promoted content. Just to pile on some more evidence here, people. This is a survey done this year by HubSpot. 91% of people, that's a huge number, pretty much everyone, within a margin of error, feels that online ads are becoming more intrusive than they used to be, and especially annoying are the mobile ads with an X that block your view, and you have to like hunt and peck with a finger on the tiny X, and it's not a good experience because sometimes you end up leaving what you were doing. It's very frustrating. Just some evidence, ad blocking is definitely growing rapidly. DataXu sees this. And it's just one more bullet point showing the users are fed up with the current state. But there's good news. There's a new format coming around the bend that's even better than digital display, and that's what we're going to dive into. So what is native? It's a great question. A lot of people ask it. It's a form of paid media where the ad experience follows the natural form and function of the user experience. So one way to think about it, it's seamlessly blended advertising. In digital, the native ads look a lot like sponsored content, units that are blended into the feed. For example, Facebook. Many of you are likely Facebook users. As you scroll through your feed, you see sponsored or promoted messages that look identical to all the other posts that you see on Facebook. That's an example of native advertising. Another example in the broader definition would be things like product placement in movies. They're sitting in a cafe drinking cans of Coca-Cola, for like 5 minutes. That's a form of native advertising. It just seamlessly fits in with the content itself rather than being a interruptive experience. Just showing some examples. We showed BuzzFeed earlier. There's different ways it can appear. Generally, native ads, how do you recognize them? By law, they have to say sponsored or some indication that it's an advertisement and not the actual content. So there's usually the word sponsored, but they look like the content that they're sitting in. They generally have a little bit of an indicator saying it's not the normal content, it's a sponsored content. But they can take different shapes and sizes, different font sizes, different looks and feels. But for the most part, today they look like an image, a headline, and some text, and maybe some logos and some share buttons. There's two categories of native. I call this bespoke native versus programmatic native. Programmatic is something that's emerged more recently, a standardization of the format so that you can get very wide scale. Bespoke is something that started earlier. This is like BuzzFeed does this. They're highly customized units that are run over long periods of time. It requires an engagement with the content producer to sort of invent a user experience that lines up with your goals. That's still a very effective form of advertising, great way to build brands. The challenge is it's publisher by publisher. It only really makes sense for the very large publishers. For example, Vice Media does this quite often, where you do an engagement for them. Maybe it takes several months to produce the creative. It runs for another quarter, but it's an immersive experience about your brand. Very different kind of native. The kind of native we're focusing on today is programmatic, which is a standardized form, which is very easy to run at wide scale. Where did this come from? I happen to also be the founder of the OpenRTB project, and this is the standard that is used for all real-time bidding in the world. Something like $10 billion a month is traded through OpenRTB. In late 2014, some companies approached us about adding native as a format supported by this protocol. And through the IAB, we rolled out version 2.3, which included programmatic native. What this allows you to do is take these elements. So on the left side of the screen, there's a URL, a name of the advertiser, a title, a description, maybe a thumbnail, a few different things. And these pieces are assembled into a native ad, which you see on the right. And all of these pieces can be assembled differently for different sites. So for this particular mobile site, it has certain text size and a certain image size, but if it was displayed on the desktop, it would be larger. If it was on a completely different site that had a blue background, it would have a blue background. So what this allows you to do is just take the elements, the primitive parts, or the atomic parts of the advertisement, and run it at wide scale across any publisher that supports native. I hinted at this a bit, but let's go into a little bit more of why this is working so well. So it's really a win-win-win-win. All the players in the market are happy with this new format. So consumers are, studies show, and we'll show a couple numbers, they're much happier with native advertising. They respond to it more positively. Instead of being annoyed, they find the advertising useful and reasonable, and in many cases engaging. So if you're trying to build affinity to your brand, those are the kinds of words you want. They're also, because of the way they're rendered on the back end, the technology can clean up any kind of malware, any kind of JavaScript bugs, and also make sure the data is very lightweight. So they're getting much more slimmed down in terms of like battery life and data life on their phone. And publishers are finding that these are lower latency, faster ad units. They're making consumers happy, keeping them around, bigger audience. They also generate revenue. Vendors like DataXu and ad servers are happy because it's a very, very clean, up-to-date format. It's not a legacy format from the 90s like most of the other advertising. Very, very well architected. And it's a new revenue source for us and a new way we can serve our customers. In the case of DataXu, the advertisers. And the benefit is if consumers are happy and publishers are happy, it's a win. It turns out native is a format that's great for building brands because consumers like it, they engage with it, they read the text, they watch the videos at a much higher rate. And so it's a great way to reach out digital, especially younger consumers that really don't watch TV anymore. So a study done by ShareThrough, ShareThrough is one of the major players in the native programmatic space on the supply side. They found that, in a controlled study that consumers that saw native ads versus banner ads were 32% of them would share the ad, whereas for the banner ad, 19%. And this was for the same advertiser. An agency created ad units to the best of their ability, trying to get people to like them and share them. But in the case of the native ad version, they're much happier. And also, people found them more personal, like they identified with the brand, something about the connection with the content. They love the content that on the page that they like. They see the native ad, and they feel a happiness affinity with it rather than oh, here's an offensive pop-up that I have to close. So there's a better rate there. There's a lot of good signs in this data, and there's a lot more studies. We'll mention there's an MMA study coming out on native video, which shows some really amazing numbers. So as I mentioned, ShareThrough is one of the suppliers. There's a growing number listed here: TripleLift, T-Ads, Unruly. Major players in the market are starting to get on board with this. Publishers want it. They're seeing the great numbers. They're seeing the low latency and the low data loads that are working well for consumers and their advertisers. So this is a growing field. There's a lot of supply coming on board. I often mention to people getting started in native, this is a great time to get started because there's a lot of supply and the prices are low, but it works very well. There's a moment in time where it's just a great place to get started. So what's changed is the comparison. The banner ads, the philosophy in advertising was almost like attack the consumer with interruptive things, like we interrupt your program to give you a message, often totally not contextually related. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Always interruptive, blocking your view, pausing your show, stopping your music. Whereas the native idea is like, let's not do that. Let's not piss off our consumers. Let's make our content minimally interruptive and seamless and lightweight, so likable and shareable. It's a new concept, right? Consumers are fighting back with ad blockers. The right response is, hey guys, you're right. Let's give you something better. In the end, you don't want to upset consumers. As a marketer, you want them to like you, right? So it's a good move. Native, it turns out, like, if you really combine all the forms of native, and this is including Facebook and Google search. You can think about, search has a lot of text links. They add a few more that are paid. That's a form of native advertising as well. but the trend line is very clear. Native advertising is growing like mad if you include all these categories. It's the wave of the future. So the first one, a lot of people don't know where to get started. They're like, do I need a new creative shop? Do I need this? Do I need that? Almost every marketer has some content they're trying to promote, even if it's not your own. Maybe someone wrote a positive news article about you. It's very easy to assemble a native ad unit and run it programmatically based on that content. It's a great way to get started. Experiment, get your toes in the water, see what the response rate is like. All you really need is an image, a good quality image that's compelling, a headline, a short body text, think tweet length, a logo, and run it through a programmatic platform. Great way to get started, and you can start to branch out from there. The second tip, one mistake people make is they just take their regular banner ads and slap it into a native unit. A lot of studies show that doesn't work well. The reason native works well is because it's seamless. So you don't want an image with a lot of call to action on it. The call to action should be in the text. The image should be something compelling that people want to look at. So high quality images that can be cropped, different ways. Most of the platforms, including everyone that DataXu works with, will have AI-driven cropping that makes sure they don't cut off heads or feet, or they make sure that if people are in the image, the people are still in the image once they crop it to the right size. So it's important you follow these good practices. A compelling, engaging image can include people or not. Headline that's punchy. You don't want to use clickbait headlines. The consumers are turning against them. They're tired of it. You won't believe what happens next. Headline is, maybe it's good for a certain class of consumers, but it's really gotten to be annoying, and people are filtering them out and treating that. It's a bad brand association. One of the headlines I saw, for example, that there was a study by Roomba that worked out very well, and the headline was, "Why the Roomba is worth every penny." That's it, and it had an amazing response, and it led to an article that explained, the story about a person who bought a Roomba and was very happy with it, and they saw a very good correlation with sales, instead of saying, 15 funny pictures of Roombas, which is another way to go. So third one, programmatic native is a really nice format. Instead of going into every single content provider and creating some kind of native unit, you can run programmatic through one provider across a wide swath of different kinds of pubs. And you can, if you work with a provider such as DataXu that provides analytics, you can compare and contrast and weigh your investment in native versus display versus TV and other formats. So, it's a format, programmatic native in particular, the format where you can test and learn different images, different pictures. Does it attract more consumers with a woman's picture or a man's picture, with this headline or that headline? Working with a well-equipped provider that has analytics chops will help you narrow down and optimize your spend much more quickly. So we actually have a fourth tip, so everyone who joined gets a little bonus. One of the most exciting formats in native is silent video. Everyone's seen these if you're a Facebook user, or Twitter has them. They're growing quite fast. In fact, the MMA's upcoming report on native video features this in particular. Response rates and completion rates are incredible compared to regular video. People don't like browsing the web and having video scream at them, but they do stop and watch these videos. These cooking videos, very popular. Anything with, say, a very compelling image in the first 2 to 3 seconds, people watch all the way through to the end. Great way to build brand. You don't need the audio. It can be an option, but just some captions, a little creativity works well. Interestingly, portrait-shaped video when you're on mobile devices is very effective. and I've seen some research showing that, if it's webcam recorded, it fits the device better. It's more contextual. People are used to kind of shaky vertical video. It works very well. So there's a wide emerging set of, like a big creative palette that doesn't take a whole lot of effort to experiment with a lot of different options. So this is our fourth tip.
Thanks, Dr. Bill. We have some questions that we'd like to ask. One, thank you for the call out on the MMA report that's going to be coming out soon. But mobile video, as you pointed out, and native video is currently a bargain. Mobile video has been a bargain for a while, meaning that its effectiveness is far outpacing its current cost, and the same is true of native. And we've seen that in our SMOX research, which is the Smart Mobile Cross-Media Optimization studies that we've been conducting for a few years. And native and video are clearly very, very important parts of that. And also, all the guests in the audience can go on the MMA Global website and download our guidance report on native advertising from 2015, and then we'll have it, which is a pretty comprehensive report on formats, effectiveness, and best practices, echoing many of the things that Bill has said today, and also this pending report, which will come out on mobile native video. But to the questions, as a brand marketer, how do they get started? I mean, this is, like you were saying before, you have to hire a specialist. I mean, you have content, but do you come to DataXu to do that, or do you go to your agency to do that, or do you go to the content partner or a publisher to do that?
Yeah, if you want a highly, highly customized experience, those go direct through publishers like, Vice Media has a whole business unit that does that for the Vice Media properties. If you want to run programmatic native, which is a way that you can run across a wide swath of publishers at scale and hit a particular audience, say visitors to your site or a particular demographic, DataXu provides that service. We can run native display, native video worldwide to billions of devices. Like I said earlier, the getting started can be a hump, and the best thing to do is get your feet wet with a smaller campaign. Try promoting some content, kind of learn the mechanics and the pricing and the reaction. It's a good way to get in there without going so deep in the end that you're trying to do some multi-million-dollar campaign, which is where we'd love you to go.
Yeah. You said you've seen this great deal of inventory becoming available. I mean, how dramatic is it? Because, a year ago, native was hot, but it wasn't probably it's widely available. Have you seen a double-digit increase in opportunities and inventory avails?
Yeah, it's more than doubling year over year and accelerating. As the only thing holding it back is demand. So suppliers are bringing on board. People aren't quite, they don't have a native budget. Maybe they haven't quite brought it online. So the publishers are ready, willing, and able to swap out all of their banner placements with native placements once the demand arrives. And for now, they strongly prefer the native placements if they pay for themselves. So they're putting extra in there, trying to encourage the market to grow. Great opportunity. Prices are low. That's good timing to go to the market.
As you describe the market growing in supply, that raises the question about quality. How can we ensure brand safety and viewability with native?
So the good news with this is that native integrations tend to be very nicely done to the most up-to-date standards. So you get an accurate URL of where your ads are running that can be checked for brand safety. Viewability, good news is it was built in from the ground up, so almost every vendor, every supply-side platform working with native builds on view only. So if you place a native ad and it's not viewed, it's not billed.
Okay. You were talking before about the assets you use for creative. It sounds like it's kind of plug and play. What about the concern that brands and their agency partners might have about protecting the integrity of the marketing positioning and so on. How can we protect some of the vital branding elements with native advertising?
So you can do it the same way we do with very sensitive partners of ours that have very, very particular requirements. There's a way you can buy in real-time bidding. We call them private deals or private marketplace, where you can put extra restrictions on the placement, the quality, in the trade for a particular minimum price. Some of our, sort of luxury brand clients are very particular about this because they don't want their advertising associated anywhere near anything that's lowbrow, right? So, I mean, it depends on your brand. It depends on what you're selling. There's no moral question there. So they put all these restrictions in place and say, well, anything that passes these normative requirements can run for us. And, every advertiser is very different. It depends on your target market and what your brand goals are.
Mm-hmm. Now tell me, are there certain vendors or partners that are doing silent video? Is that something that anybody can offer, or is it being offered by a select few?
It's running yeah, I mean, it runs through the same standard, so anybody integrated with that standard can run silent video. It's DataXu supports it, and others as well. Okay.
Well, look at Bill. Thanks very much, Dr. Bill, for your insights on mobile native today. We have no further questions to address, so I'm going to wrap up with some information about the what's coming up with the MMA. You can imagine we have a latency problem today with our slides, but we do have during the course of the year we have numerous events and about 22 events around the world. We have forums coming up in South America and in APAC. So look for more information on our 2017 calendar soon. If you're a member of the MMA, you can take a seat at the table and join any of our programs. DataXu is specifically involved in our Programmatic as a co-chair there. We're proud to have them there. And they're obviously involved in mobile native, and they'll be involved in mobile video. So, but all member companies can participate in any one of these programs, all these programs. That's one of the benefits of membership. But whether you're a member or not, you can participate in the conversations. We have daily Smart Brief that you can subscribe to. We've got a presence on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, and of course we have resources on our website that you can access. The members can access deeper than non-members, but everyone can get to the case study of the mobile marketing playbook. All audiences are eligible to see the guidance reports and the benchmark studies, and the webinar library, well, this will reside soon, is also available to all. So until next week, we thank you for attending the webinars this week, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks again to Dr. Bill. Thanks again to DataXu. This is the second day they've had great webinar material, so we thank them for that, and have a good day, folks.